enough to engage in self-reflection and self-critique and understand that all cultures deserve our respect.
Right. And all cultures. So how many cultures are there? How many cultures exist? Like, there's got to be like 20, right? 22 cultures. How many cultures are there? Any thoughts?
Hundreds of cultures, I think, right?
Infinitely many as there are people on this earth, there are cultures, right? Because it's individual. And we might talk about culture in different ways, right? What is your cultural celebration of the solstice, or the coming of the Savior in your faith, or the way that birthdays and weddings happen, right? The way that we celebrate end of life. All of those things may speak to your culture. It may be the languages that you speak. It may be the foods that you eat. It may be the way that your family hugs, right? It might be just how you and your friends get together and do a silly handshake, right? There's all these different ways that culture shows up. And recognizing that some of the differences that are out there are targeted, frankly, right? You get different treatment based on your gender, right? Men get preference, not because they should, just because the way this world is wired right now, okay? If you have lighter skin, right, in many parts of the world, you get preference. Again, not because it's correct, but because there's something baked into the systems that we live where we are allowed to perceive people with different skin tone as of different value. Completely incorrect. Orientation, right? Growing up and reading the school books that I did, you would never hear about same-sex couples, right? Never hear about more than two genders. And yet, people exist in this world with those dimensions of identity, right? And they're no less valid, no less real than, it's not like unicorns and dragons, right? That we don't get a chance to see, right? These are people who exist in our world. These are people we brush elbows with. They're people we talk to every single day, right? Right, Nettie?
That's right.
Your mic cleared on. So, and just understanding that no matter the difference, we're all different. People and cultures deserve our respect. So when we look at defining cultural humility, right, these 5 frameworks, this framework, admit, use, recognize, put, and ask, can be helpful. Admit when you don't know the culture or social context of the clients, right? Just recognizing that there are things we don't know. There are things we don't know. And that ignorance is not a point of weakness, but a point of strength, right? Because it's not the kind of I don't know and I don't want to know. It's the I don't know and I get to be curious. I get to lean into asking, intellectually asking the question. And when appropriate, right, maybe asking verbally. In terms of use, right? Use resources that broaden understanding of cultures in the communities you serve. What does that mean? I'll put that out to you. What is that? How does that point land for you? Use resources that broaden understanding of cultures in the communities you serve.
Could mean attending community events that heighten the awareness of other cultures. It could mean attending your child's school flag day.
Sure.
That would help the children and you embrace other cultures or learn about it or be curious about other cultures. Could mean a variety of things in and around your community that would help you to satisfy your curiosity of other cultures and perspectives.
Yeah, and precisely, Sherilyn, thank you. And I would say just even being aware, right? Like, you don't need to, I don't know, show up to a Catholic mass to learn about a religion, right? You don't need to celebrate Tres Reyes if that's not part of your culture, right? Three Kings Day. But being aware that it's on the calendar, right? That this is a day that you probably don't want to expect a lot of people from the community to show up for something else because they're involved in the celebration, right? Like, how many things are scheduled on December 25th? Not many, right? And that shows this sort of Christmas preference, right? But that's not where everyone celebrates the coming of their Lord, right? So, just a point. You're absolutely right, Sherilyn. And then recognize that the client is the expert of her own culture, values, and beliefs. Let's flip that. Jill, I'm the expert on you. I know everything there is about you, right? And and I'm gonna make statements and I'm gonna make assumptions because I know what you need, right? I see you. I know your name. I know your whole story. Is that true? Is that fair? Have you had that happen, Jill?
Absolutely.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Can you say more?
People assume because you're a white girl that grew up in South Wyndham that you have a particular bias, a particular train of thought, that you may have known that I was raised in a particular church in that area and think that that's what I still 100%,
right.
Okay, now I know who you are.
Yeah.
And I've had people make statements and I'm like, okay, not really, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
People make assumptions and speak to you in certain ways, or sometimes assuming you believe exactly as they believe based on those assumptions.
Sure. Andrea, you pointed out, who's showing off in the morning, right? Talking about me speaking Spanish. In Europe, having mastery of two languages it's not a thing. Like, oh, you got two languages. nice work, right? Here I'm working on German, French, as well as speaking English fluently and having Spanish under my belt before the age of 10, right? So, like, there's just more of a there's more emphasis on embracing other languages, other cultures, and I think that has a lot to do with the size of the countries, and their proximity to each other, but also just with this. As an American, I grew up believing that this was the center of the universe, right? And stuff that happens elsewhere, who cares? And it's a big world. It's a big world. And there are a lot of friends to make. So looking at this hemisphere, Spanish is a great language for me to pick up if I want to increase my number of friends. But if I go around the world, right, the largest language, the most populous language is what? Do we know? What's the most spoken language in the world?
Spanish?
Mm-mm.
No.
Nope.
English?
That's number 2. Spanish is 3.
French?
Come on, guys. Mandarin Chinese.
Love?
It's not. Sherilyn, love is a state of being. Love is an energetic level. It's not a language. There is a language of love. You're so cute. It's Mandarin Chinese, right?
Really?
Yeah. So, and there are many more languages where millions of people speak it. Anyway, right? But things to know, just, and things to be aware of.
Can I interject though?
Please
That It's
do.
important to know that all Chinese do not speak Mandarin. There's many
Right.
dialects in China,
Yeah.
and that there's many people there that don't speak Mandarin. So that would be an assumption we could make.
Sure.
Saying, "Oh, well, you speak Mandarin because you're from China."
Yep. Ni hao. I'm like, oh, I don't. Nice try, but yeah. Amy says that's true. That awesome for Amy to verify. I was actually like, where's Amy here? So.
All right, sorry, yeah, I'm having a hard time with the connection here.
You're okay.
Yeah, so there is too many Chinese dialects. I think I at least know 5 or 6 myself.
Yeah. And dialects being different than distinct languages, right? So now, Amy, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't speak Cantonese. I don't think I know any words in Cantonese. But it's its own language, right? It is distinct from Mandarin. You couldn't speak Cantonese and have someone who only speaks Mandarin understand you. Is that not correct?
Correct.
Yeah, right. So
for me, I understand both of them. So sometimes when I even say it, I get people will correct me too, because sometimes I mix the two slang together, so the different languages together for it.
And that's nice. That's helpful, right? Maria, our friends over at Access, have helped me with my Spanish a lot, right? And sometimes they're just like, you know what? I get it. I understand where he's going with this. Or maybe I'm saying it right. I don't know. But it requires each other, right, to improve in these ways, in seeing different cultures and embracing language at the next level. All that's important. Put assumptions aside when working with clients. I don't know your story. I don't. That's just the truth. And the best way for me to serve you, right? Not the quickest way, the best way, the most complete way, the most humanistic way for me to serve you is to be curious about you, is to ask questions about you, right? And they've got to, of course, be relevant questions, right? But that's what I'm looking to learn, right? What are the pieces of information that I need to understand and serve you correctly? Serve you the way that respects who you are, not just the situation you find yourself in. Okay? And then ask clients to share their own experiences, knowledge, and resources so that you can support their health and well-being. Right? It's just what I was saying. All right. Any other questions around cultural humility? We had some assignments to this point, right? But here's what I want to get into right now: assessing your individual capacity. So, no, we did this. This isn't the activity I want you to do. It's we worked on this for homework. So your individual capacity. What did you find? What did you discover? What did you learn? Do we need to spend some time on this? Do we need to spend some time in breakout groups to work on this?
That's your call, Teach.
It is my call. It is my call. But I'm asking you. Did anyone do the assignment?
I found it's easier to list things you're good at and like to do, and not so easy to dig down to the things that you don't like to do and you're not so good at. Yeah.
Because it could be an infinite list, right? Don't like to do and not so good at might be things that I just never tried, right? Because the interest isn't there. But maybe some things that, I would be happy with 5 or 6 things to say, yeah, this I've never tried. It comes up in my work, or comes up in my life. What I'm not so good at, I'm not so good at repairing my own car. All right, like in the engine part. I might be fine at it. I just don't have any interest to get in there and make the repairs, right? Pull the hose out, check the valves. Like, No thanks. Right? There are people with, like, I think a lot about the right tool for the job. I'm not the right tool for that job. So I'd rather get someone else's hands in it. Things that I'm good at mowing the lawn. I don't like to do it. Right? I'm good at numbers. I'm good at quant. But it's not how I find value in my work, right? There are little ways that I get to play in numbers, and that's fun. But it's not the majority of what I do, right? What I'm good at and I like to do, I love to talk to people. I love to connect with people. All right. I hope that shows on both sides that I like it and that I'm good at it. And then what I'm good at and I don't like to do, oh yeah, right? So it's not that I don't like to work in numbers, but I don't want to work in numbers as for a living. Right? I don't want that to be the majority of my work. I'm good at driving. I don't want to do that for a living, right? You get your CDL and you hop in a cab and drive trucks. You know, you don't have to worry about much in terms of bills, right? And not to mention that it pays really well. That's not what I want to do. You know? So my dad's got a firewood business, right? I'm really good with the supply chain piece of firewood, right? Felling trees, chopping it up, splitting the wood, loading the truck, relationships, delivering. I don't want to do that, right? That's not what I'm into. So just off the top of my head, those are some of my individual dimensions here. But what did the process, what did the activity of doing this work bring out for you? Right? Here are some examples, additional examples, right? Like to do and good at. Professional, develop and deliver trainings. Personally, physical activity and parenting, right? This person's really good at those things. Things that they're good at and they don't like to do. Professionally, they're good at supervision and developing events. They don't like to do that stuff. Personally, they're good at traveling, but they don't like to do it. I don't quite understand that one, but it's an example, right? Like to do and not so good at. Keeping on schedule. Painting, cooking, reading. That's keeping on schedule piece is very true for me, right? But not so good at painting, cooking, and reading. I can't really relate to, but that's what they like to do. And then don't like to do and not so good at financial management, time management, keeping on top of schoolwork. Okay? This person's in school, right? So what does this sort of analysis show you about you?
With the things that you feel as though you're not so good at, it might be areas to expand on and learn more about, especially if in this case relates to anything relating to the role of a CHW.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is it important for you to like to do everything that you do? Right?
No, but I think it's good to just acknowledge it, don't ignore it.
Yeah.
And just acknowledge it, and
Yeah. It's okay that this isn't the activity that brings you joy. I would still want, like, maybe 80% of my time spent in doing activities that I find joyful, right? But that 20% of the time, okay, right? But there are things that I'm good at, or that I'm not so good at, that if I did them a little bit more, I'd really get good at them, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
It's just a matter of applying myself, right? So all that, they say it only takes 4,000 hours to master something. Is that it? Yeah, 4,000 hours to become a master is a, a stat that's out there. What is 4,000 hours? That's a year of effort. That's a year of full-time effort. Right? And so if you broke that up, over the course of 5 years and, spent a few hours each night working at a thing, you could get very, very good at it. Right? And not to become a master, but just to say that this is something I'm good at. Right? But since this isn't the important part, right? Moving from don't like to do to like to do. I think this journey has everything to do with confidence. Oh, that is too light a number. Too light by half. Woo. Anyway, confidence, right? If I don't like to do something, it has everything to do with my not feeling like I'm good at it, right? There's a lot of correlation there with I'm not good at something and I don't want to do it. But as I do it, as I become competent with it, as I build my confidence with it, my relationship with that task or with that challenge or with that concept can change. Is that true of anything that's happened in your lives?
I think so, because parenting is one of them. We're all built with confidence in order to be good role models to our kids.
Yeah. But if and we might not have wanted to become parents, right? That might not have been in the plan. In my case, I've wanted to be a dad for a long time, right? And for that to happen, when I was 37, I was like, finally. And there wasn't anything else in my mind about it, right? Like anything else that needed to come along with being a dad, I was game for it. No, I was not good at it initially, right? You those of you who've had first, second, maybe third children and beyond, that with that first kid, you're just stumbling. It's it's a series of mistakes, right? And you're learning right along. And then as that second one comes along, wow, this one's so much easier. And why? Because you've done it. You've done a lot of these things, right? You've managed the diapers, the feeding schedule, the sleeping, right? It almost feels painless. And the third one came around, you're just like, how many more are we having? This is fine, right? And then they, grow up and run around on their own, and you're like, oh my God, never mind. 3's good. But confidence, competence, right? These are things that help us come forward in moving from like to do to not liking to do, and from being not so good at to being good at. And I would say also, this is, while it's set up in binaries for ease of like assessment, things happen along a continuum, right? Where we like to do things, we sort of like to do things, we actually would prefer not to do things, and I absolutely hate things, right? So like, and it's a much richer continuum than just this like and don't like, a good at and not good at stuff. Yeah? But just to help us break it down, if we want to like more of the things that we do, it has to do with us being able to analyze our attitudes, right? Put in a little more effort, right? Take the effort seriously and build our own confidence and competence to move along the lines, Right. Any other discoveries from the from that assessment? Anything else that folks want to share?
I think it kind of tied into the fact where we're always talking about being a CHW and the things about ourselves that, you know, we have to look into or improve or be better at because, like you always express, I couldn't be around a person that reeked of urine. I mean, I can, but in my mind, I'm going to be like going crazy about the fact that they stink, but not, you know, creating a stigma behind it rather than knowing there's probably something going wrong there. But that's like, you know, anything in ourselves, like, oh, I hate talking to people, but I'm so good at helping people.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like, I'm sure that's some of us, or, you know, like, just the fact, I think Nancy expressed that one time, like, you know, being nervous and, you know, like, you're speaking to somebody face to face and you're like, oh, Lord, like, what's going to happen? You know, am I going to drop my pen? Am I going to, you know, fall out my chair? Like, you know, just small things that you don't realize that, you know, you hate doing, but
Right.
like you said, with practice and with time, you get better at them, especially when it comes to something like work or like you express driving. Like we may hate driving, but we probably do a pretty darn good job so we don't have an accident. You know, we put enough confidence in it so that nothing bad does happen. I guess that could go for, you know, a lot of things.
That's a great point. My personal story: when I was 16 years old, I didn't want to drive. All of my dogs I'd lost to vehicle accidents, and I just, you know, had it in my mind that I would hit a dog. And gosh, I never wanted to hit a dog. And so, especially in a car. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to let my friends drive. It's going to be fine. My dad's like, you're getting your license, right? And moreover than that, he had me get my license and he sent me to skid school. Now, skid school up in Massachusetts is a class that you take in the winter, and they set you up in a car on an ice rink, right? And you know, it's a parking lot that they ice off, and they have you drive towards cones and get yourselves out of tailspins, and you know, and correct your vehicle, and I love it, right? And so now, not only, I mean, I don't like driving all the time, but I like driving. And it's not like a thing. When, you know, my girlfriend's like, here are the keys, it's totally fine. Because I know I'm competent and confident in my ability to navigate the vehicle in a safe way. So, regardless of the conditions. Sorry? Jose's back, everyone. Jose's back. Oh, thank goodness. We were lost, Jose. We were a ship without mooring, and here you are. All right. Module 8, client-centered behavior, change, motivational interviewing. So we talked a lot about active listening. Active listening is level 1 motivational interviewing. And so we'll get a little bit more into the weeds about motivational interviewing and how that impacts our work. All right. Could I have someone please read?
I'll read.
Very good.
Okay. Autobiography in 5 short steps. Portia Nelson. I walk down the street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I am not lost. I am helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I am in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it. I see it is there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. I walk down another street.
Can we relate to this? What is this author saying? What is Portia saying about her life?
I know better, I do better.
Sherilyn, yeah. I know better, I can do better. Sure.
It starts. Yeah, she took the words right out of my mouth. That's it.
Yep. Nancy, what were you saying?
It starts out with a habit. You're so used to doing it, and it's like what you just said, breaking it, changing it, learning from it.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it evolves quickly into a habit. What about fault? What about this concept of fault?
Sometimes it's easier to just blame yourself for everything, and maybe sometimes other people. But we have to sit back and take a good look at ourselves and see how we're walking down that street.
Yeah. Portia starts off saying in bullets 1 and 2, it isn't my fault.
Taking accountability.
Right. Now, things are going to happen to us, right? Things are going to happen to us. But if we keep making the same choices and the same thing keeps happening to us, who's really at fault? Right?
The definition of insanity.
Mm.
Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
Right. Right. So, and look at the way that in 3 things have shifted. Right? My eyes are open. I know where I am. Right? When have we found ourselves in familiar situations? And we're just like, what am I doing here again? All right, time to get out, right? It is my fault. I get out immediately. Done messing around. I'm not going to sit there and fuss about it. I'm not going to, pout like I did in 2. It takes a long time to get out. I can't believe I'm in the same place, right? Where they're not accepting fault. And then 4, they avoid the scenario, they avoid the situation completely. And then in 5, they just don't even head in that direction. What are those things in your life? And this is rhetorical, meaning you don't have to answer out loud, Jose. I say that because you're the one most likely to jump in with it. What are those things in your life that you've needed, those mistakes that you've needed to make again and again and again until you were finally like, what am I doing here? This behavior does not reflect the person I wish to be. It could be around sobriety. It could be around relationships, I think, as it is with me, right? It could be, any sort of behavior that you find unproductive. Jose says, when the pain becomes greater than the pleasure, change takes place. Yeah. I would offer that when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change, then change happens, right? But if you're making a counterbalance between pain and pleasure, then yeah, right? When it hurts more to stay the same than it does to change, that's when change happens. Other thoughts?
I like when we get to the state of maturity when we know that, wait a minute, this looks like this is going to be a groundhog event and a groundhog day. And then that memory comes to your mind. I've been down this street before. Wait a minute. I'm not going to go down this street again.
Right.
I see that this is a test.
Yeah.
when we get those little tests, and it's like, wait a minute, I've been down here before. I know how this is gonna go.
Right.
And so you stop it right there.
Yeah.
And make that change right away, so it doesn't happen again.
How do you? Where's the road, Nettie? Where's the road to the state of maturity? How can I drive there? I'd like to show up in the state of maturity.
All right, one step at a time. One sweet step at a time.
And I would say that we mature in the ways that we're challenged, right? And so there may be challenges that I haven't faced yet that I'm not going to be able to handle with the mindset of like stage 3, right? I'm not going to be able to say, oh, this is my fault, right? It's going to happen, and I'll just, what happened, right? I didn't know this could happen. Oh my goodness, somebody help me.
I miss those conversations with the elder people in my family that are no longer here.
Yeah.
The day you could sit down and ask them for advice. But then at this stage of my life, it's the ability to be able to tell someone else, hey, I've been down there and this is what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if this is going to help you, but this is what I did in my situation. And so I think that level of maturity comes in and is able to help someone else.
Excellent.
I think the irony of what Nettie is saying is, like, even when we're speaking about elders and they've been through so much, I just want to comment on the fact that they had a SHIT at the same time. So just like small example of like staying with their husbands. Their husbands could have been cheating a lot of the time,
right.
Having outside kids and staying, or were not good to them, abusive or anything of that nature, but staying with them for the fact that this is the source that takes care of me and my children. This is the stability. This is how, this is what you're supposed to do. You stay together. You don't divorce, or you don't, and I know even in some cultures it's like that. But it's just the irony of, like, better, but that doesn't mean you always, I wouldn't say do better, but you think that what you're doing is good for the better great, whether it's for your children or the situation that you're in. Just like when you talk about relationships, and I could imagine that there are probably plenty of times where you told yourself, like, well, things will get better, or she loves me, or maybe something's wrong with her and we need to get help. Maybe I can help her, with the demons that she's facing, or, things of that nature. We make a lot of excuses a lot of the time too. So it's just the irony of, like, even when we know to do better in our subconscious mind, I guess it is, that knows better, and that it's like, why didn't it click immediately? Like, who wants to be hurt? Who wants to go through, tragic situations? Like, who wants to be, like, in a rut? Like, but we do it anyways. I think it's just, like, human nature at the same time. And like you're saying, like, you're learning to mature in so many different situations. Like, you could be 50, 60 years old and still do things that, are not mature or you shouldn't do. So.
Well, whoever gave Alexis my diary, I'm a little upset. Yeah, no, precisely. It's there's the wisdom, right? The wisdom of experience is predicated on the environment, right? There were times in these United States when it was a lot less safe to be a single woman, to be a single mother, right? It took until COVID for curbside groceries to really become a thing, for instance, okay? And if you're a mom, you've been the primary caregiver of children in any way, shape, or form, you know that bringing kids into a grocery store from, basically those first 5 years is just a recipe for a harder time than you're looking for, right? I mean, might have been when I was wearing my kids, I would have I delighted in it, right? But once we start talking about managing several kids, or when they're running around, I don't want to have to get out to make the purchases, right? And yet that was what was demanded of people who needed to go shopping, predominantly mothers and primary caregivers of children. They'd have to bring the kids in. They'd have to bring the kids in. It's just an extra hassle. I know exactly what I want. Here's the money. Give me the curbside food. What's the big deal? Right? And now you can get it just about everywhere. That took COVID to happen. Right? Our wisdom, right? The wisdom that I've gained was based on the environment, the time, right? The things that were happening then. In 1981, when my parents divorced, dads never statistically got custody of their kids. Never. It never happened. And the only reason my dad got custody of me is because my grandmother was there at the custody hearing. I mean, stop me if you've heard this one. There's an old Irish gentleman judge sitting in front of my father and my grandmother, and my mother and her boyfriend were on the other side. And he said, Mr. Harrington, I have some questions for you in terms of your validity for custody. I understand your job pulls you away from the house at all hours when you're on call. Who will take care of your son in such an event? My dad's 29 years old, right? He doesn't know which way is up. This is his first divorce. He doesn't have any other kids. He didn't know what to say. My grandmother comes in. I will, Your Honor, because we're going to be living with her. Very good. Mr. Harrington, should Ian need to be homesick from school, who will look after your son in such an instance? I will, Your Honor, before my dad can even think to say anything. Very good. And it goes on like this for a little bit. And just a couple more questions. The good judge brings his glasses down and looks deep into my dad's eyes and goes, Mr. Harrington, I'm going to direct the remainder of my questions to your mother, who seems to have all the answers I'm looking for. There are no words to express my gratitude to my grandmother for making space for me and my dad in his childhood home, where she already had raised 12 kids, to let me come home there too. But the point I was getting to was that nowadays, dads, when they can present an appropriate environment for their kids, will get consideration in ways that they didn't back in the 1980s. Okay? And dads are held a lot more accountable to the parenting than they had been in earlier stages in our history. Okay? If you ask me, guys still get away with, get off lightly, frankly. But that's just the system we've got, and I can see it correcting, but it's correcting slowly. We'll just have to keep working at it. That's all I'm saying. But that the stigma around divorce is, I would say, just about gone. Right? It's kind of like everyone gets divorced, Alexis, right? It's just like so many people get divorced that it's kind of normal, right? Kids, like when I was, again, when I was in school, I thought all of my, and really for the most part it was true, all of my peers had nuclear families. All of my peers had, mother, father, same household, usually a sibling. Like, it was just normal. That was normal. I was abnormal, was my paradigm, right? And, nowadays it's like, oh, yeah, are you with your dad this weekend or are you with your mom this weekend? Like, it's kind of a common conversation. So it's just, times change. And so sometimes the wisdom that would be shared of you need to have a man in your life in order to, in order to be whole, in order to become who you are. I think that has just about eroded for straight women, right? To hear that, or straight or not, you might get that. You need to have a man in your life in order to. And my understanding is that happens less. Obviously, I wasn't the one hearing it, right? But my friends and folks that I speak to, that paradigm is dissolving quickly. We do need other people. I do agree with that. But it doesn't necessarily need to be a romantic partner.
Well, can we duplicate you, Ian? Because the compassion that you have in your heart, I mean, I'm going to like clone you, right? And make like 50,000 of you, like today.
That'd be horrible. Oh my God. Look, we love sweets. We love milk. Both of these things are bad for us. We have terrible gas. You don't want it. Thank you, Nettie. That's very sweet of you to say. I think it's time for a break on that while I fire up my cloning machine. But let's take 5 minutes. We'll see you back here at 9:57. Enjoy.
Recording stopped.